Welcome to SAM Conversation, an online program of South Asia Monitor. Today we are going to discuss a very important and a very interesting and a book which is Unravelling the Kashmir Knot, Past, Present and Future. This is the second version which has been penned by Mr. Aman Hingorani, a fourth generation lawyer. The first, which was Unravelling the Kashmir Knot, was published in 2016, and I had the pleasure of reading and reviewing this book. Both these books are eye-openers and trailblazers, because the first book of Mr. Hingorani was based on British archives which were declassified, and I think we owe a debt to Mr. Hingorani for the kind of research he went and did there, because everything about the partitioning of India, undivided India, was all there, is all there. The status of Jammu and Kashmir, the status of Pakistan occupied Kashmir, it's all there. And the important fact that emerges, facts that emerge from the first book are why the British wanted to partition India, and create Pakistan. This was part of the great game. They wanted an extension of the Islamic, continuation from Turkey till the Chinese border, to prevent the Russians from, coming and poaching here, so to speak. And I think it was not enough for them to plunder and loot India, literally, but it was very important for them to, as per their principle of divide and rule, to divide India and to partition it so that as an undivided India, it would not be as powerful as it would have been. What also emerges from this is that we have been managing the Jammu Kashmir problem with Pakistan, with even the state before the abrogation. We were managing it with elements there who were not altogether, who did not altogether have the welfare of that state in mind. As it turns out now, in a movie called The Kashmir Files, there's a lot about that post-independence, those decades, which did not emerge in the media. Mr. Hingorani makes a very strong, point, makes a very strong argument of he says that there are about over 50% of India is been, snatched by two nations, China and Pakistan. And one way to get it back, there exists an organization called the International Court of Justice, which I think, the only time that one recalls India going to it was in trying to get Commander Jadhav of the Indian Navy, retired, who Pakistan was trying to impose a death sentence on. Aman, please start unraveling to us the knot.
Well, good evening to everyone, and lovely to see you, Colonel Bhat. Well, let me put it this way. I'll try to make it as simple as possible. India is a very, very ancient civilization, but modern day India and Pakistan are creations of the partition agreement, which was reflected in the British statutes. That was the Indian Independence Act of 1947, the amended Government of India Act of 1935. And that was the constitutional law which governed both India and Pakistan. Now, my reading of that law, which is there in the book, makes it clear, for the reasons I given in the book, that Jammu and Kashmir, the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, which acceded to India under this very law, became an integral part of India. So the very law that created in modern day India, the very law that created Pakistan, makes J&K a part of India. So if we start from that, if we see the constitutional law, because Kashmir is a political issue, but the best way of depoliticizing an issue is to subject it to a legal analysis to see what the law says on that point. And as per the reading of the law, the entire territory of J&K, as it stood on 15th August 1947, upon accession on 26th October, became a part of India. However, there's a political stalemate between India, Pakistan, and China. About 50% of that territory, more than 50%, is in the hands of Pakistan and China. About 35% with Pakistan, about 20% with China. So you actually have a situation in 2024 that more than about 55% of the territory of J&K is still under foreign rule. Indian citizens are under foreign rule. So you have Indian territory, which is being held by India, Pakistan, and China. There's a political stalemate. How do you break the political stalemate? We don't have a diplomatic solution. Pakistan and China couldn't care less about diplomatic requests from India. We don't have a military solution. We don't have economic solution. How do we get back our territory? How do we get back our citizens? It is here that where I suggest that perhaps we can use international law or law, that is constitutional law, which govern India and Pakistan, as a means to break the political stalemate, and then generate some political momentum to resolve this issue. Law can't resolve anything, least of all international relations. But law has a potential of altering the political discourse, molding public opinion, which can then lead to a political movement. So that's where the book talks about that if in law India is entitled to the entire territory of J&K, it lies in India's interest to use law to break the political stalemate and reclaim our territory and our people. Now, if you go back into the history of this particular problem, the reason why I had to get into declassified British archives and examine why the British scripted the partition of India, as is evident from their own documents, their own archives, which is not much in public discourse in India. But the partition was scripted, or it became a foregone conclusion the minute the British realized India is not going to support the British in the Second World War efforts. The maps were drawn up much earlier than 1947, and the book contains
No,
all
but
that.
I'm sorry, if you could just dwell on that again, because the British got, we were 2.5 million Indian, Indian soldiers, sailors, and airmen in the Second World War, who were the winning factor for the Allies.
True, but you see, the minute the political force on the Indian subcontinent at that time was the Indian National Congress, and the Indian National Congress had simply said that if even Britain and Germany are going to war, and why should we be at war? Why should the British declare India to be at war? And in protest, that even resigned from all the seats that won in the 1937 elections, which let the Muslim League fill in that vacuum. But the point is, when India did not said that we will not support your Second World War effort, and coupled with the 1942 Quit India movement, the British realized that the Indian National Congress cannot be a reliable force or a political party or a political force once they hand over power. So they had to create a state which is friendly to them, which, if you see the Chief of Staff's memorandum, etc., eventually became what is now Pakistan. Northwest Frontier Province is what they wanted. It was completed the Islamic descent you were talking about from Turkey to China. Northwest Frontier Province is a hilly area, not viable as a state. And so Punjab had to be partitioned so that the fertile plains of West Punjab go to Northwest Frontier Province. The Congress thought that British will never partition Punjab. It was being run by, ruled by the Unionist Party, a secular party. They would never partition Punjab. So they actually tried to make partition less attractive, or try to preempt it by saying, if you partition Punjab, you'll have to partition Bengal. The British said, very well, we'll partition Bengal also. Two-nation theory was used as a pretext for partitioning. But if you talk, so you see the archives, you see the exchange of telegrams between the Viceroy and the Secretary of State, Viceroy on the subcontinent, Secretary of State in London. They talk about Zulfullah Khan making a map of the dominance way back in 1940. And the blueprint of partition was sent by the Viceroy in the end of 1945 to London. This was 1945, which is virtually identical to the Radcliffe Award. So partition was the foregone conclusion. It had been scripted. But I have placed the Kashmir issue in context of the partition, because apart from Northwest Frontier Province, the other region which completed that Islamic descent was Gilgit-Baltistan. The British wanted that territory to be free from Indian control, and hence they assumed J&K would accede to Pakistan being Muslim majority. But when it did not, it was the British which carved out Gilgit-Baltistan 5 days after the accession of J&K, after it became Indian territory. 26 October, the accession happened. 31st October, the British Gilgit Scouts carved out the Gilgit region, which was Indian territory, hoisted Pakistani flag, and told Peshawar, you take it over. And at that point of, yes.
No, I would like you to also, touch upon a bit of deception that was carried out between Mountbatten and Radcliffe of disclosing exactly what was after 15th August.
You see, the thing was, there were many reasons. One was Sikh hiccup, because Sikhs said we want Khalistan, and they were misled into saying, well, Radcliffe would look into it, knowing jolly well Radcliffe had no mandate. Then there was this whole issue of the Chittagong tribes, the tribal area,
Yes.
they're not Muslim, and they were supposed to, they were being given to Pakistan. So the entire mechanism was that Radcliffe would delay the war till Mountbatten leaves for Karachi, and then it will reach later. So we actually had the partition coming into effect from 15th August 1947 without the boundaries even being declared, which actually contributed to the bloodshed, 2 million people being massacred, which Mountbatten was gone on record to say, well, so what? That's only a small percentage of the Indian population. But that is apart from that. As I was saying, the British had earmarked Gilgit-Baltistan region to be carefree from Indian control. At that time, we were still dominance of the British. Pakistan was dominant till 1956. We were till 1950. The king was the king of England was the or the or UK was the still the formal ruler. The Indian Army, Pakistan Army was headed by British Chief of Staff. They are the ones who decided to draw the buffer zone, what is the so-called Azad Kashmir, because the idea was that if India goes to Pakistan, goes to war against Pakistan to recover Gilgit-Baltistan, India will liquidate Pakistan, defeating the very rationale of partition. And so we must have a buffer area, and that strip of territory was actually demarcated by the Indian Pakistan chief of staffs who were British, so that this area is kept free from Indian control. These areas were earmarked to be kept free from Indian control. And I've talked in the book how the matter eventually was taken at the instigation of Mountbatten to the United Nations, so that the United Nations Security Council was subverted to ensure ceasefire without requiring Pakistan to vacate that territory and hence keep that territory for the British for their great game against Soviet Russia. So this was an entire trap. I've documented in the book from British archives, from the United Nations Security Council reports, the trap laid on by India and how we fell for it.
Thank you very much. And there are two more points which I'd like you to throw light on. The idea of partitioning India was, the propping up of the Muslim League was done sometime in after 1857, and
Well, yes,
eventually they found an ideal person in Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah to head it and to steer it uh, into the till the partition, uh, even if he was to live only 1 year after that. Um, and that and secondly, we'd like you to throw light on what has transpired after abrogation of Article 370, please.
see, as far as the first part is concerned, I've documented how after the First War of Independence of 1857, the role of the East India Company came to an end. The British Crown took it over. In 1858, with the first Government of India Act, which talked about a centralized body. But from the political front, Hindus and Muslims were putting up a united front to throw out the British. And even if you see the speeches of, say, the Ahmed Khan, etc., people who were eventually the founders of Pakistan, they were all talking about Hindustan being a territorial unit, regardless of religion, all who resided in Hindustan were Hindus, even if they were practiced Islam or Hinduism or Sikhism or Christianity. So that was one aspect of it. And I've documented how after the visit of the Prince of Wales, later the King of England, they said Congress is becoming a power. Congress had been set up by that time, a secular party. And so we need a Muslim Congress to checkmate that. And that's the way the Muslim League came into being, and talked about separate electorates, etc. So that all that is in the book. Later on, once the British realized that they needed to get actually they replicated the policies they did with the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire, which created Turkey in 1920s. I've drawn out the parallels of the politics in the Middle East and on India, identical politics. The way they had Sharif Hussein to lead the Arab revolt, they identified Jinnah, who was till then supposedly actually described by Sarojini Naidu to be an ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity, and who had told the British that he prefers his own views than carving up the city. He had disowned at Cambridge the idea of Pakistan at the Round Table Conference. So, and he had even disowned the two-nation theory in the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan. I've documented all that. He was a politically ambitious ambassador, having no following, but he used he led the British, he collaborated with the British to use a two-nation theory to legitimize the carving out of what is now Pakistan. And he was promised that land. He was said, I don't care what we get, even if I get the same desert. but I want my own state. So for him, Pakistan was a political mission. So that all has been documented by many commentators. I've just summed up and taken these facts from different sources to show how the leaders of undivided India would not rise to the challenge put up by the British, who got away with partitioning the subcontinent, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the same people who Gandhi has said there's a fusion of, it is like Hindus, Muslims have learned to coexist. They lived side by side throughout. By partitioning, you're cutting a living organism into pieces. So the British has taken the entire subcontinent for a ride, and till date, we're not able to get back our territory, which is with Pakistan and China. But that's one part of it. If that is the crux of Kashmir issue, 370, actually we have equated 370 erroneously, in my view, with the Kashmir issue. The basis on which J&K became a part of India's instrument of accession, 370 is a provision of the Indian Constitution simply to give effect to the terms of accession. 370 is not the Kashmir issue. The genesis of the Kashmir issue does not lie in Article 370. The solution does not lie in Article 370. Whether you keep it or you abrogate it, Pakistan and China are not going to vacate. So even by abrogating 370, you haven't got back 55% of the territory of the princely state, now UTs. J&K has become a UT, but the former princely state, 55% of that territory is still with Pakistan and China. By abrogating 370, we haven't got our people in back to India. Even those people who reside in POK or China-occupied Kashmir, they've lost their consciousness of being Indian citizens. It's important to emphasize the princely state was never part of Pakistan. Princely state was never part of China. As per the Pakistan constitution, these citizens are not Pakistani citizens.
And if I may please just interrupt, we are saying part of China, part of Tibet, please. It is the India-China border, which we refer to as the India-Tibet border, all of which China swallowed up, by the.
They have gobbled up. They have gobbled up Tibet.
Absolutely.
That is yet another area which needs to be examined. But on the ground that this boundary is not demarcated, the Johnson line, etc., there is a dispute between India and China on this point. But when we talk of the Kashmir issue, we blank out China. We say it's a bilateral issue. How is it a bilateral issue with China has captured about 20% of Indian territory? So you have Pakistan in part of the territory, you have China in the part of the territory, the China-Pakistan economic corridor, which is the vital part of the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, yes, starts from Gilgit-Baltistan, which is Indian territory. So you have a ridiculous situation where China is investing billions of dollars on Indian territory to build this economic corridor with Pakistan, which will give it strategic depth into Central Asia, into the Middle East. It goes into the Gwadar Post. So all this is Indian territory. How are you going to get it back? So if you can't get it back diplomatically or politically or economics through economic solution, the idea is that if we go to the ICJ and we tell the ICJ that under the very law that created modern day India and Pakistan, J&K is a part of India, the very presence of Pakistan and China, there is aggression. Tomorrow, nobody can then say there's a jihad going on out there. No country can take advantage of the presence of Pakistan and China in J&K. What we have done is the mistakes we need to undo our mistakes. The mistakes we have done is that as per the law, J&K became part of India. Still, we said we accept the accession provisionally. So we created doubt on our own title. Then we internationalized it by going to the United Nations. In the United Nations, we committed to plebiscite. Having done that, we gave standing on every country in the world to comment on J&K. We enabled the international community to say this is disputed territory when it is Indian territory. After we have agreed to a ceasefire without letting Pakistan, without requiring Pakistan to first vacate. So we are focused on territorial status quo. We talk about Shimla Agreement, Lahore Declaration, etc., without realizing that after Col Anil Bhat's case, earlier you had Berubari Union's case, which said India can cede national territory by legislative action, by amending the constitution. Subsequent, you have Col Anil Bhat's case, which says territorial integrity and unity of the country is basic structure of the constitution. That means Parliament cannot cede national territory. How can we even talk about LOC into the international border unofficially also? Officially, we say we need to get it back. That's a parliament resolution. But Shimla Agreement talks about inviolability of the ceasefire line. We can't cede national territory. Parliament has no power. Our policies are against our own constitution. We have made mistake after mistake. Now, after having internationalized the Kashmir issue, after having let the international community call it disputed territory, now we say it's a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. We blank out China, and we let it. We don't do anything to get back our territory. So if we go to the ICJ and say this is an Indian territory, and if the ICJ rules in our favor, it changes the political discourse. No country tomorrow can say that Pakistan can give even moral support to what's happening in J&K. We all know what the kind of export cross-border terrorism that comes in. The international community we have decisions from Namibia, Nicaragua, the ICJ decisions are talked in the book, there are plenty of precedents. What are the consequences of her ICJ decision? The very presence of Pakistan, China will be declared to be aggression. The international community will have to tell them to vacate. It hardly makes, I mean, of course, there are skeptics who will say China will never vacate. Pakistan will never vacate. Very well, we'll negotiate with them as to what is to be done under Indian sovereignty. But at least it changes the political discourse. What is the strategy the Indian establishment has had from 1947 till 2024? What is the strategy they've had to get back 55% of the territory of princely state? They've just thrown in the towel. We've given it up. Apart from making parliament resolutions and formal protest, what is the concrete policy? We keep focusing on 45% of J&K, which is with India. What about the remaining 55%? So what I'm saying is what you're doing, what you want to do, I'm not involved. For me, Article 370 is irrelevant. I'm more interested in seeing how will you get back POK or China-occupied Kashmir? And one way of doing that is to use international law to get a finding in law that the entire territory is Indian, so as to change the political discourse. And what can the ICJ say? And I've already given the whole jurisprudence of ICJ by which they would have to rule it as Indian territory. Otherwise, there is no Pakistan. If they take a different view. And if they say wishes of the people are relevant, very well. We have ascertained the wishes of the people through the elected state constituent assembly, who have said J&K, we the people of J&K want to be an integral part of India. That's also been ascertained. So we don't stand to lose anything by going to the ICJ. But if we win, we have changed the entire national and international political discourse on J&K. Today, we are defensive. So it is our territory, our people. We always become defensive on the international circles. We always try to reduce it to bilateral issue. The way the international community condemned Pakistan for Kargil invasion and Pakistan had to withdraw. We need to build international opinion to say entire territory of J&K is Indian territory and condemn Pakistan and China for committing aggression. And incidentally, the 1963 Sino-Pakistan boundary agreement itself says that the territory of J&K, which Pakistan gifted to China, is subject to the outcome of the resolution of the issue between India and Pakistan. So China has never claimed sovereignty. They are saying that this is between India and Pakistan. Whoever once has to resolve, we'll deal with that party. So we'll deal with China about CPEC. We can negotiate later on. We don't need to dismantle CPEC. That can be under Indian sovereignty. The possibilities are huge. But first, we need to get out of our fear of global politics. India of 2024 is different from India of 1947. We cannot have a situation where even an inch of Indian territory is under foreign rule or Indian citizens are under foreign rule.
I think there's so much more I can ask, but I think we are a little strapped for time. I must thank you for whatever very important points that you've come out with, and I feel that there's this much more attention needs to be paid to this aspect of both as far as China and Pakistan are concerned. There is no end to our fighting, managing these relationships with a lot of lies that is, peddled by both China and Pakistan. Lies in documents, lies on the table, and lies on the ground in identifying territory. Thank you very much. I look forward, in fact, to one more discussion in the future. Thank you very much, Aman.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.